Yes. Okay.
Perfect.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Kareem to you as well. And thank you so much for taking your precious time out, Sarah, and for joining us on today's Insta Live on the Lantern of Light. And I would just like to start off by saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all our viewers who are joining in and who will gradually join and will watch this program, inshallah, later on. We have a very lovely and an impactful topic that we are going to tackle into, and that is about how can I work on my Ramadan self-stigma this year, which is something that is very timely and current because every year we are, having this beautiful month of Ramadan, and how does it take a toll on certain individuals is also a question. Now, for instance, what happens is that when this holy month starts, why is it that, when Ramadan starts is when everyone wants to do everything from the Quran recitations to the amals and, to become spiritually active. And also when it comes to nutrition, like I'm sure we will talk about this as well, like people become more self-conscious about their diet plans, about what they're going to eat. So all of this happens during this month. So inshallah, Sister Sarah Gulamhusein will take us through into today's conversation. She is a psychotherapist. She deals with a lot of clients who go through trauma, and she has founded Tzasech, and mashallah, every day she deals with a lot of clients and guides them on how to deal with a lot of emotional aspects as well as spirituality aspects of their lives, inshallah. So Sister Sarah, let us begin first a little about yourself. Please, if you can give us a little introduction about yourself, and then inshallah we will go into the topic as we are waiting for a lot of viewers as well to gather in, inshallah.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was such a lovely introduction. I don't know if I can do one better. But my name is Sarah. I'm a psychologist. I trained in the UK, and I'm originally from Kenya. Really proud to be East African. I've specialized in trauma, so I work predominantly with people who have experienced trauma and who are trying to heal or recover from trauma. And it was around the time when my mother passed away in 2018. After that, when my sister and I kind of came together and we founded Tzasech, which is sort of a mental health and human rights platform, because we realized you can't really separate the two. They're very, very intertwined. And mental health and human rights, both of them, form like the core of a person's identity, of how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to other people in the world. So that's kind of a little bit about ourselves, and how we try to do a project every year, and it's kind of going back and thinking about it because we started in Ramadan 2 years ago. So it's kind of like a sort of an anniversary. So alhamdulillah, it feels good to kind of reflect back on that.
MashaAllah, that's lovely, Mabruk. And we pray that you carry on with it. Inshallah, you're doing an amazing, amazing job. So the question for today, okay, so when it comes to Ramadan, Sister Sarah, I'm sure that even we both can connect to this. So what happens with me is that when Ramadan is nearing by, I'm already looking forward to a lot of things. So apart from the iftars, I'm also looking forward to the mosque part, and how we're going to be attending the daily Quran recitations in the mosque. And then we've also got sports tournaments post iftar and all of that. In my mind, I'm actually literally thinking, how am I going to juggle all these things, throughout Ramadan? Because what happens is that in the very beginning, initially, you've got that hype, and you've got that buzz, you've got that energy, and then by the time you're done with your literally 10, 12 fasts, right? Now your energy is beginning to go down, and now you're beginning to get exhausted, and not just physically exhausted, even mentally exhausted. because you want to catch up with so many things that are happening, this event, that event, and you want to do everything in this month. So if I were to compare the Ramadans that have been passing over the years, for example, when I was a child, and to right now, I feel personally that I really miss the Ramadans that I spent during my childhood years, because it was much more relaxed and it was more about spirituality. Like, I remember fasting, and my mom, used to encourage me, like, as a young girl, and that was my priority, spiritual.
Yeah.
But now I think that there's so much into the picture. So if I were to ask you first, how did your Ramadan basically start this year, and how has it been going for you, and how would you compare your Ramadan as a child and as to now? What would your answer be to this?
That's very, very valid and insightful, and thank you for sharing that. I feel like when we're young, we don't have a lot of expectations on ourselves in this holy month. We're still learning, we're still trying to wrap our head around what is Ramadan, what is the importance of it, and there's not a lot of pressure, external pressure, there's not a lot of expectation, there's not a lot of you have to do this. You have to check these boxes so that you've made the most of this month. And as you're growing up, personally, I've experienced it as well. Growing up, there's the list of these check boxes just grows. It just gets longer and longer and longer. You have to go to these, events and be part of the community because it's only available in Ramadan. You have to, finish this set of du'as and amals. Why? Because Ramadan is the most important month, You have to make sure you listen to every lecture every day. Why? So you can gain knowledge in this holy month. Sometimes it's not a bad thing. I think I need to put a disclaimer there. It's not a bad thing to do all these things. These are very healthy, very, very good things. And it's, like you said, we look forward to it, so that we feel that sense of belonging. But there's a fine line between it being healthy to it crossing over and kind of being unhealthy. Crossing over and making you feel burnt out, making you feel like you said, those first 10 fasts, you're ready, you've got the, the energy, the josh, and then you run out after those 12 days and you're like, what was I doing? Where is this energy gone? You don't realize you're burning yourself out because, one, you don't have a sustainable place to draw from. Okay, so your energy source is not sustainable, number one. Or number two, you're not being able to meet your expectations, and that puts you at a disadvantage straight away because you're relying more on the outcome rather than why you're doing this. What's your sense of purpose? And I think increasingly, especially post-pandemic, we're feeling that, because during the pandemic we didn't have all these places to go to. We had so many lectures to listen to, but we would maybe choose the short ones. I don't know how your Ramadan was during the pandemic, but we were less pressured to do things because you're at home and no one's really watching you or judging you or harping at you to do things. So you experience a little bit of that freedom. But I think this is the first year after the pandemic where I think all the mosques are open and, all the community centers are open and we're all going and doing things. So it is quite different.
Yeah. Also, there's so many things happening at the same time. For example, you've got the quiz programs happening at the same time. You've got the darsas, the halaqas, the recitations, and so many other activities. There's so many events that are happening at the same time, and sometimes they're happening all together at once. So it's so difficult to catch up as well. Yeah, that's also something that I wanted to put out. Now, why is it, Sister Sarah, that especially as I mentioned even in the intro, that when this month starts is when everyone wants to do everything? Why does this happen, and how can we connect it to our mental health, as well as if we can bring in a little bit about the spirituality factor?
Yeah, so the main thing is this concept called self-stigma. And self-stigma is when you are judging yourself, right? When you're putting that pressure, that expectation on yourself, which you know, or a part of you realizes you cannot fulfill that, you can never reach that expectation, right? So when you're stigmatizing yourself, you tend to want to do all these things, and if you don't do them, you'll feel like, I'm not good enough, I've not, attained what I wanted, what I'm supposed to attain, what is expected of me. But also what makes me feel like, okay, I've done this, I've done this for the sake of Allah. So that's called self-stigma. And in Ramadan is when, even as a therapist, I see that the most of my clients who come in Ramadan, they come because of that, because they cannot take that pressure because of the stigma they're putting on themselves during Ramadan. Yes, it is a holy month. Yes, it is a month where we have to make the most of it, because it's been singled out, it's being elevated over the other months. I completely agree with that. But how can you do that at the expense of your own health? How can you do that when you're putting yourself at a losing end? It kind of takes away from the joy and the peace that you get from doing things like that, because you're constantly pressurizing yourself, you're stigmatizing yourself, you're judging yourself when you're not being able to tick all those boxes. And it's very much related to this this ideal standard you've set for yourself, is that if I don't reach that ideal standard, there's something wrong with me. Or any variation of that, however you've interpreted it in your mind, is that something is wrong if I don't reach that. And that very much, it can come from many places, but it usually results in things like anxiety, panic attacks, even eating disorders. A lot of people who have struggled, Muslims who have struggled with eating disorders, will come in during Ramadan because they're struggling with it again, because they maybe relapsed or regressed into those unhealthy eating patterns during Ramadan. So it's really intertwined with your mental health when you start putting that pressure on yourself. A little comment about eating disorders I just remembered is, a lot of my clients will break iftar. They'll break their fast. They'll have iftar with their family or at the mosque or wherever it is you're having iftar. And they will on purpose not eat properly, right? So they'll eat less than they usually eat. And generally that's okay. Like, you wouldn't think twice about it. But someone who struggled with an eating disorder, that's unhealthy for them, because they're restricting themselves. So they are kind of going back into those unhealthy patterns, because then they don't look after themselves. They don't make sure they're getting, enough sustenance to last them for the next fast. So that's just one example, but there's so many different ways it's intertwined with your mental health.
Yeah. So I would just like to encourage all our viewers, if you are with us, please do share in your views in the comment section, so we can have some live questions as well. Sister Sarah is an expert in this, and whatever we're talking about, if we have any relevant questions that are related to today's topic, then we can help you get those answered as well. And I very much agree with you, Sarah, on the fact, especially about the breaking of the fast during the holy month of Ramadan, when you've got a schedule planned ahead. Like, for example, after iftar, usually you need to rush to the mosque or to attend an event, and it becomes, everything is like so jaldi. You have to break your fast and pray your namaz and everything and just rush. So very well agreed that at some point I feel like you're rushing yourself too much. Like, you're not sitting and enjoying your iftar the way one should, in peace. You're speeding up. It's also not good for your health, because even Imam Ali alayhi salam has said that if you want to be healthy, if you want to not age and all of that, if you don't want to have any illnesses in the future, you should eat your food very slowly, chew it nicely and all of that. So when we are rushing ourselves because our mind is already looking forward to another extracurricular event, I too sometimes really feel bad on that. But like, I feel guilty, that I didn't enjoy my time the way I was supposed to, just because I have to attend the program. So I think we can all relate to this. Now, Sister Sarah, there's a very important question, and that is that, how do you know that you are going far with your Ramadan self-stigma? What red flags can one see or detect? What symptoms, what, things can we notice about this?
That's a very good question. Usually when you're stigmatizing yourself, when you're in that situation, you'll, one, start forgetting things. You'll probably forget what you did or how many things you've done, right? The moment you start feeling forgetful and you need to start writing a list, you have to stop and really realize, am I living in the present moment? Am I making the most of my now? Or am I so worried about these checklists and, these things I have to accomplish? Number two, you'll feel very tired, very fatigued. At the end of the day, when you get into your bed, you're just gonna knock out. Right? You'll feel, and even when you wake up, you'll still feel like, I'm tired, I'm not really fresh and awake. A lot of people say that, and they even tell me, is that we're fasting, that's why we're feeling tired. No, it's possible to fast without feeling tired. It's possible to fast without feeling so fatigued, like as if you can't even do anything. It's all about how you're looking after yourself. And I think that's really one of the important aspects of fasting, is how well do you look after yourself when you're fasting. So if you're feeling too fatigued, that's another red flag. Feeling anxious, when you're feeling anxious, especially in a public setting, when you perceive that other people are judging you or looking at you in a particular way, that's a red flag immediately. Why are you feeling anxious when someone else is looking at you? Why do you feel like, oh, I need to recite this for another person, or I need to do this particular thing and stay till the end of the mosque program, even though I'm exhausted, but I have to stay for someone else? Or what will people say if I go home early, And then constantly having to justify yourself. When you feel like you're justifying yourself and saying, oh yeah, I did this because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like, no one asks you why are you doing this? Or why, for example, why did you go home early? Or why were you falling asleep in masjid? Sometimes people ask. And I find that very like, why are you asking such a question? But when you start justifying that, oh yeah, this, and then this happened, and this, and this, and that kind of mentality is like, you're already putting pressure on yourself. So that's a red flag immediately, And then the other one, and I think this is really important, we can all relate to it, is when you're doing the amals, when you're doing the du'as, it's just going into one year, coming out the next. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what you're reciting. Sometimes you don't even know where the person has reached in the presentation. You're just like, like that is a red flag. Because why are you doing that dua? Your mind is not there. Already you're experiencing something. Maybe you're tired. Maybe your mind is thinking about all the other things you have to do. When you're in that position, that dua is not helping you. You can sit there. Of course, there are many advantages to just sitting there and listening, but your presence of mind is not there.
Very true.
So that's a red flag. And I think we've all related to that at some point in time or another. The dua is going on and we're just like mindless.
Your mind goes numb because you're just like tired, especially as the days pass by, with the repetition. One really tired. Like sometimes it's just like, what am I hearing? Which line am I on? Okay, we're doing unless you're woken up again on the beginning.
You're just going through you're just going through the motions for the heck of it, or because that's programmed in you that I have to finish this, I have to sit till the end of the dua, otherwise I'm not making the most, or otherwise something or the other or whatever. That's a negative thought. That's you thinking negatively about what you're doing.
And Sister Sarah, I want to especially bring up this point for mothers, young mothers who struggle with their little children. Like it is so difficult. I have my little daughter. She's just, I just have one child, but the struggle that I go through with, especially right now, when we go for iftars outside as well, when we're invited somewhere, and now you can't say no, you have to go. But the one who is running after this child, on their feet, not enjoying their iftar is me, the mother.
Yeah.
Now imagine how much one gets, so mentally and physically drained and exhausted. And now this happens in the mosques as well. I've seen a lot of mothers who need to accompany like 2, 3 children just because, they have to do it, right? Because if they don't, then as you said, like, you're shamed for it, or you're told that, you're not doing the ibadah bit in your
Yeah.
Ramadan, you're losing that spirituality aspect. But like, can you imagine the mental pressure that, such mothers probably go through? Imagine getting the kids ready and then you go and now you can't sit in peace at mosque. So it's like you can't concentrate even on the dua because your children are, running around, they're making a lot of noise, there's a lot of noise distraction, all of that. So all of this as well falls into the category of the mental health aspect, I feel. And as you mentioned, like for example, if someone is sleepy and they can't make it, after to this mosque program, and now why to force oneself, to stay back at the mosque just because you have to. So I just want to like this message as well, and I'm sure you can also advise that there's no pressure. You see your energy level, you see your mental health aspect. How much can you take as a mother, right? So you really want to do this ibadah, you can do at home as well with your children around, whatever. But maybe if you feel like you're more comfortable at home and you can, give more time to the du'as and your namaz compared to being in public, then I think one should, go for that option, right? Because at the end of the day, we're looking at the spirituality aspect more over here rather than pleasing people.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? This is reminding me of something that I once heard. I can't remember where I've heard it, but there's something to be said for where you're doing your amal, right? So wherever you do your amal, let's say you do it in one place in your house, that place, you leave that mark, you leave that energy there, and that energy will testify for you on the day of judgment.
Yes.
So when you're doing that sunnah amal, try to do it in many places. Don't limit yourself to one place. Yes, go to the mosque, if you're capable of, if you feel like you have the energy and this is what you're going to do, and your kids are okay, and your family's okay, and you're fine, go to the mosque, do that. That's amazing. You're going to get, it feels different in the mosque. But again, like you said, there are some people who just are not able to do that. So don't put that pressure on yourself if you're not able to do that. You're not physically or mentally able to do that. Go for as much as you can. Do the rest at home. Try picking a different location. If you have a garden, go into the garden. Do it under the sky. It's so beautiful. Have you ever tried doing amal under the sky? I love it. Looking at the stars and just feeling with nature. It's amazing. So there's so many options that you can give yourself. You don't have to just limit yourself to one. And just when you were talking, Sister Sakeena, I just remembered that there's this aspect of perfection, like I have to do everything perfectly in this month, otherwise my amal will not be accepted, my deeds will not be accepted in this month, right? And I just want to say, I've been there. I have a personal experience of that. I have been there. I really struggled in 2019. The Ramadan that year was very difficult for me because I had all these things I needed to do. It was just after my mom had passed away. I put so much pressure on myself, and I struggled mentally for it. And I asked Allah this one question. I asked him, I am so imperfect, I'm struggling so much, what can I do? I asked him, what can I do to make you love me and accept what I'm doing? That's like how bad I had gotten. And a couple of days after I asked that, I came across this narration. It wasn't a verse, it was a narration. And I can't remember it clearly, but I think someone had gone to the Holy Prophet, and the Holy Prophet had asked him, what do you want to ask for? And he said, I wish I could ask for being perfect, for not making any mistakes. And the Prophet told him, well, actually, Allah prefers those people who make mistakes. If he had to choose between a servant who is perfect and a servant who makes mistakes, he would choose the servant who makes mistakes. And then man was shocked and asked him, why would Allah do that when he's telling us to be perfect? And he's like, no, Allah will choose the servant who makes mistakes so that he can forgive that servant. Because he loves when the servant asks for forgiveness, when the servant reflects, when we reflect on the mistakes that we've made and we ask for forgiveness and we try to be better, that pleases Allah more than being perfect. And that changed my life. Like after that, I have never struggled in Ramadan, alhamdulillah, you know? So I feel like ask Allah, make the most of asking Allah in this month. Tell him your frustrations, tell him the deepest, darkest parts of yourself. Because even though he knows, it's different when you voice it. Different when you say, Allah, I am going through this. What do I do? You know, just simply asking, what do I do? And he will give you your answer. He gave me my answer. And alhamdulillah, I have lived by that motto ever since. So do that. Don't be afraid of asking Allah.
Thank you, for really bringing that up. It was really hard to think, overwhelming. I could literally feel your pain, and I'm sure that the strength comes from your beloved marhuma mother. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless her and keep her in the high ranks of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Inshallah, we pray for her. And
thank you.
Really, I think this is the dua of your mother right now as well. I can see that. And I hope that the message that you're sharing with us, impact everybody, all the viewers who are watching today's program, inshallah. And very well said. I agree to all the points and reflections that you've added from your bit. And in fact, I think you added also the practical ways, practical ways to overcome, how we can overcome our mental health aspects during this month of Ramadan. What would you like to add on a final ending note on today's program about, having noticed people struggling with their mental health more, especially in this month of Ramadan than at any other time in the year, okay? And how is this, is this even related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So what would your view be on this?
It definitely is related to our connection with Allah. I think every time we struggle, there's some part of us that is also, what I'm trying to say is, even when we struggle mentally or physically, there's some part of that that's connected to our spiritual struggle, right? So all three of them are interconnected. And even all that we've said about pressure, about this perfection, all of that, if you really think about it, there is a part of us that is probably going above and beyond this month because we feel like Allah is not going to accept it, Or maybe there's a part of us that feels like no matter how much we do, it's not good enough for him. Or because we've sinned, we need to do extra. Or any variation of that, there's some part of it that is connected to our spiritual relationship with Allah. And I urge, everyone to think about that. It's really important. Just check in with yourself and ask yourself, what's your purpose? Why are you doing this particular thing to the point where you're burning out, to the point where you have no leftover energy? What's your motivation? What's your purpose for doing that? Because that's going to really tell you more about your connection with Allah. And that is what you need to rectify. That's not the only thing you need to rectify, because you're also struggling mentally and physically. So you need to focus on those bits as well. But spiritually, you do need to think about that. And I would also say, more than that, don't prescribe by that checklist. Even if you can't do half the things on the checklist, do the things you can with full presence of mind. If you can do only one dua, do that one dua properly, to the point where you felt like, yes, I've done this dua. I've connected with it. And even if you're sitting for a long dua, like we're doing dua iftidah, you're sitting for a long dua, if you can't be there for the whole of it, try to be there for at least one part. Pick one line and reflect on that for the whole dua, because being there, being physically present is very important, but then presence of mind is also very important, and do as much as you can. If you can't do much, you have to